Walk away before you embarrass yourself, old man. That's what Brandon Williams said to me in the lobby of Meridian Tech, right there in front of Maria the cleaning lady and a couple of engineers pulling another all-nighter. Kid thought his MBA from Northwestern and his $1,000 suit gave him some kind of edge over me. My name's Michael Thompson. I'm 48, been in tech for 20 years, and I'm Senior VP of Technology at this Fortune 500 company. Brandon here? He's been working under my wife Rebecca for 6 months as a data analytics associate. Working real close, turns out. I'd come back to grab some files I forgot. Wasn't planning on running into my wife's boyfriend, but there he was, strutting out of the elevator like he owned the place. Lobby was mostly empty, just Maria wiping down the reception desk and those 2 developers who practically live here. You don't deserve a woman like Rebecca, Brandon kept going, making sure his voice carried across all that marble. He wanted an audience, wanted people to see him put the older husband in his place. Maria looked up from her cleaning, clearly uncomfortable, but couldn't look away. Can't blame her, this was better than cable TV. I didn't say anything. Just walked over to the security desk and started signing in. Tony's been working security here for 15 years. He knows I don't usually come back after 6 unless something's important. Brandon followed me like a lost puppy. Rebecca told me all about you, he said, checking himself out in the glass walls. How you've gotten lazy. How you don't appreciate what you have. Security cameras were getting all this. Tony was pretending to read his newspaper, but I could see him listening. This was going to be all over the office by morning. Young hotshot embarrassing the old executive whose wife's stepping out. I finished the log and headed for the elevators. Brandon was still running his mouth, putting on a show for whoever might be watching. Guy had decent credentials, Northwestern MBA, Goldman Sachs internship, all the right buzzwords. Everything that impresses people who don't know the difference between looking smart and being smart. Last chance, Mike, Brandon said, using my first name like we were buddies. Walk away and maybe I'll tell Rebecca you handled this with some class. Look, I'm not proud of what happened next, but I just stood there waiting for the elevator. See, Rebecca and I met 12 years ago when I was director of IT at a smaller firm. She was the new marketing manager, sharp presentations, killer networking skills. I liked her ambition, the way she handled difficult clients without breaking a sweat. We got married after 2 years, bought a house in Highlands Ranch, talked about kids that never happened. Company went through 3 buyouts during our marriage, and each time I moved up. Rebecca moved up too, landed at Meridian as marketing director about 18 months ago. That's when things started getting weird. Longer hours, expensive clothes, this distance when she talked about work. I mentioned it once, real gentle-like, and she brushed it off as corporate stress. Brandon Williams started showing up in conversations slowly. First as this sharp new analyst, then Brandon thinks we should change our digital approach, then late-night texts she claimed were work emergencies. I've been managing tech teams long enough to know when someone's running unauthorized access on my network. 3 weeks ago, I saw them at Starbucks downtown during lunch. Wasn't a work meeting, Rebecca laughing at whatever Brandon said, her hand on his arm like marketing directors don't touch junior analysts. They didn't see me, but I saw plenty. Elevator showed up and I got in. Brandon followed, still talking. You know what your problem is, Mike? He said as the doors closed. You stopped evolving. Rebecca needs someone who gets where business is heading, not some guy stuck in the past. I hit 14 for executive. He hit 12 for marketing, 2 floors to finish whatever speech he'd been practicing in the mirror. She deserves better than some has-been who peaked years ago, he continued. Someone who can match her energy, her vision. I could see Brandon's reflection in the steel doors. He was loving this, feeding off what he thought was my humiliation, making my marriage part of his personal success story. When we hit 12, Brandon stepped toward the doors, then turned back with this smug grin. Oh, and Mike, Rebecca won't be home for dinner. We're working late on the Morrison account presentation. Doors closed on his face. I rode up 2 more floors thinking about that. Morrison account. Interesting choice for a lie. I killed the Morrison project 6 months ago when their budget got slashed. Anyone paying attention to actual business instead of office politics would know that. I walked to my office and sat down. Building was quiet now, just server hums and the cleaning crew working their way up. I opened my laptop and started typing. Not some angry email, not a nasty text to Rebecca, something way more useful. A request to IT security for Brandon Williams' complete access logs over the past 6 months. Network activity, file downloads, email patterns, badge swipes. everything we legally track on every employee. Brandon thought this was about old versus young, legacy thinking versus innovation. What he didn't get was that I hadn't survived 20 years in tech by being lazy. I survived by learning how systems really work, how information flows, and how to trace digital footprints people think they've covered. Request would take 24 hours to process. Standard protocol. I leaned back and looked out at Denver's skyline. Downtown was lighting up office buildings full of people working late, making deals, building careers. Some honest, some not so much. Brandon Williams was about to learn the difference between looking smart and being smart. Rebecca was about to find out what happens when you share classified info with someone who doesn't understand corporate security. My phone buzzed. Text from Rebecca. "Working late again. Don't wait up." I typed back, "No problem. Take your time." Then I forwarded that IT security request to my friend Janet in legal with a note. "Routine audit. Let me know if anything interesting shows up. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about muscles or attitude. Sometimes it's about patience and letting people hang themselves with their own rope." Janet from legal called me the next afternoon while I was sitting through another budget meeting. "Mike, you need to see this. Can you come down when you're free?" I wrapped up the meeting and took the elevator to legal on 8. Janet's office overlooked the parking garage, and I could see Rebecca's BMW sitting right next to Brandon's leased Audi. "Cute. Your routine audit turned up some interesting stuff," Janet said, shutting her door. She'd been with the company 12 years, worked her way up from paralegal to senior legal counsel. Smart woman who didn't miss much. She handed me a thick printout. Brandon Williams has been accessing files way outside his pay grade. Customer databases, financial projections, competitive analysis, stuff a junior analyst has no business looking at. I flipped through the pages. Brandon had been busy. Over 4 months, he'd downloaded client lists, pricing strategies, merger discussions that were supposed to be VP level and above only. "Gets better," Janet said, pulling up another screen. "Check this out. He's been forwarding summaries to his personal Gmail. Not the actual files, he's smarter than that, but summaries that happen to match what he's been accessing." She showed me the pattern. Internal doc about client pricing Monday. Personal email about market research insights Tuesday. Confidential merger talks Wednesday. Personal note about industry trends Thursday. Smart enough to avoid copying files directly, but not smart enough to realize we track data patterns, I said. "Exactly. And here's the kicker." She clicked to another report. "He's been staying late specifically when Rebecca Thompson works late. Badge swipes show them leaving together, but always 10 minutes apart." Something cold settled in my gut, but I kept my voice steady. "What's company policy on unauthorized data access? Immediate termination. Possible legal action if we can prove he intended to share trade secrets." Janet leaned back. "Mike, I gotta ask, is there something personal going on here? Because if this is about your marriage, I need to know before we move forward." I appreciated that she didn't dance around it. "There might be, but the security violation's real either way." "Fair enough. What do you want to do?" I thought about it. Brandon had handed me everything I needed to destroy his career, but if I moved too fast, it'd look like a jealous husband using company resources for payback. "Can you sit on this for 48 hours? I want to document a few more things before we involve HR." Janet nodded. "I'll keep the investigation open. But Mike, if this escalates, I'll have to report the timeline to corporate. They'll want to know about any delays." Understood. Back in my office, I made 2 calls. First to a private investigator I'd used for background checks. Second, to my lawyer. That evening, Rebecca came home around 9 with takeout from that expensive sushi place downtown. She seemed relaxed, almost cheerful. "Good day at work?" I asked. "Really productive. The Morrison project's coming together nicely." She didn't even hesitate. "Morrison? Thought we canceled that last year." "Different Morrison. Morrison Industries. They're interested in our analytics platform." I nodded and went back to the sports page. Rebecca had always been quick on her feet, but she was getting sloppy. Morrison Industries had been our client for 3 years. If they wanted our analytics platform, I'd be in those meetings. Over the weekend, the PI sent photos. Rebecca and Brandon at a hotel restaurant in Cherry Creek holding hands across the table. More shots of them going into a Ritz-Carlton suite, staying 3 hours, leaving separately. Monday morning brought another report. Brandon had been meeting with competitors, lunch with a TechFlow Solutions recruiter Wednesday. Coffee with someone from Datacore Industries Friday. Both companies were bidding against us for major contracts. Picture was getting clearer. Brandon wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was using whatever she told him to position himself for a better job. Classic insider stuff, but with corporate secrets instead of stock tips. Tuesday, I called Janet back. "I've got more," I said, showing her the photos and recruitment meetings. "He's not just accessing our data, he's shopping it to competitors." Janet studied everything carefully. "This changes the whole game. This isn't just policy violation anymore. This is industrial espionage." "What's our next move? We involve the FBI? Corporate espionage is a federal crime." She paused. "Mike, this is going to get very public very fast. Your wife's going to be implicated as his source." I'd been thinking about that all weekend. Rebecca had access to most of the files Brandon had downloaded. She was either incredibly careless about security or she was actively feeding him information. Do what you have to do. That afternoon, FBI agents showed up at Meridian Tech. They seized Brandon's computer, phone, boxes of files from his desk. The whole marketing floor watched them escort him out in handcuffs. Rebecca called 20 minutes later, voice shaking. "Mike, something terrible happened. Brandon's been arrested. They're saying he stole company secrets. That's awful. You okay?" "I'm fine, but they want to interview everyone who worked with him. I'm scared they'll think I was involved somehow." "Why would they think that?" Long pause. "I don't know, We worked closely on several projects. I'm sure it'll be fine. Just tell them the truth." The truth. Rebecca was about to find out how complicated that could get. That evening, 2 FBI agents came to our house. Special Agent Martinez and Special Agent Kelly. They asked Rebecca to walk through her working relationship with Brandon Williams. Rebecca stuck to her professional collaboration story, but these agents had done their homework. They knew about the hotel meetings, late-night texting, the pattern of data access that lined up with her project schedules. "Mrs. Thompson," Agent Martinez said, "we have evidence that Mr. Williams accessed confidential files immediately after meetings with you on multiple occasions. Can you explain that pattern?" Rebecca looked at me, then back at them. "I don't know anything about what files he accessed. That's not my department. But you did discuss project details with him?" "Of course. He was on my team." Agent Kelly pulled out a tablet, showed Rebecca some documents. "These are emails between you and Mr. Williams discussing client strategies classified above his clearance level. Did you share this information?" I watched Rebecca's face change as she realized how deep this investigation went. The confident marketing executive was disappearing, replaced by someone who suddenly understood she was in serious legal trouble. "I want to call a lawyer," she said quietly. The agents nodded. "That's your right, Mrs. Thompson. But understand that Mr. Williams is cooperating with our investigation. He's provided detailed information about his sources within Meridian Tech." After they left, Rebecca sat at our kitchen table staring at her hands like they might have answers. "How long have you known?" she asked without looking up. "About the affair?" "Few weeks." "About the data theft?" "Figured that out yesterday." She finally looked at me. "Are you going to destroy me?" I poured myself water and sat across from her. "Rebecca, I didn't destroy you. You destroyed yourself. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences." Next morning, Rebecca didn't go to work. Her lawyer told her to take leave while the investigation continued. She sat in our kitchen drinking coffee, staring at her phone like it might explode. "They're going to fire me," she said when I came downstairs. "Probably. The FBI thinks I was Brandon's accomplice." "Were you?" She looked at me with something between anger and desperation. "I never meant for it to go this far. Brandon said he just needed context for his reports, background info to make his analysis better. And you believed him?" "I wanted to help his career. He was ambitious, driven, reminded me of myself when I was younger." She paused. "He made me feel like I mattered." I poured coffee and leaned against the counter. "You did matter, Rebecca. You still do. Just not to me anymore." My phone rang. Janet from legal. "Mike, Brandon Williams just pled guilty to industrial espionage. He's cooperating fully with the FBI for a reduced sentence." She paused. "He's specifically naming Rebecca as his primary source." I looked at my wife, who was watching my face for any clue about the call. "What's the company's position on Rebecca? Termination for cause, effective immediately. Legal's recommending we cooperate with federal prosecutors." Another pause. Mike, I'm sorry. I know this is personal. Thanks for the heads up. I hung up and sat back down. You're fired. Brandon's testifying against you. Color drained from her face. What am I going to do? Get a better lawyer. That afternoon, I drove to the office to clean out Rebecca's desk. HR had already boxed up her stuff, but they needed family to collect it since Rebecca wasn't allowed on company property anymore. Marketing floor was buzzing with gossip. Rebecca Thompson, the rising star everyone thought would make VP within 2 years, fired for corporate espionage. Brandon Williams, the ambitious young analyst everyone figured was going places, facing 5 years in federal prison. I took the elevator to executive with Rebecca's box. Photos of us from better times, motivational books, the expensive pen set I'd given her for our 10th anniversary. Remnants of a career she'd destroyed for a 29-year-old who'd used her and thrown her away the second the FBI showed up. My assistant Linda was waiting with messages. The CEO wants to see you when you have time. And there's been reporters calling about the Rebecca situation. What kind of reporters? Business Journal, Tech Weekly, couple of bloggers who cover corporate security. Stories getting attention because of the FBI angle. CEO meeting was brief. Richard wanted to make sure I was handling the personal stuff professionally, that there wouldn't be conflict of interest issues with my continued employment. The board's impressed with how you handled the security breach, he said. Your quick action probably saved us millions in lost competitive advantage. I nodded. Just doing my job. Still, we're grateful. There's going to be a substantial bonus in your next review, and we're fast-tracking your promotion to Executive VP. After the meeting, I sat in my office thinking about the past 2 weeks. Rebecca was facing federal charges that could put her in prison for 3 years. Brandon was definitely going to prison, his tech career over permanently. I was getting promoted and praised for professionalism. The PI had been thorough. Brandon had indeed been shopping our secrets to competitors, but none bit. TechFlow Solutions and DataCore Industries had both declined his information and reported the approaches to their legal departments. Brandon was too amateur to realize legitimate companies don't buy stolen trade secrets from junior analysts. Rebecca had been smarter about information sharing, but not smart enough. She'd given Brandon access to just enough classified data to make him feel important, never realizing he was documenting everything and planning to use it as leverage for a better job. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Coming home late. Meeting with lawyers. I typed back, take your time, but I wasn't going home to wait. I was going apartment hunting. Over the next few months, the legal process ground forward. Rebecca hired an expensive defense attorney who tried to paint her as a naive victim of Brandon's manipulation. Didn't work. The evidence was too clear, the pattern too obvious. Brandon's lawyer tried to argue he was just an ambitious young man who made mistakes. Also didn't work. Industrial espionage is a federal crime regardless of your age or ambition. The media attention was brutal. Local business press covered it extensively. Meridian Tech espionage scandal became shorthand for corporate security failures. Rebecca's LinkedIn profile attracted dozens of comments, most not supportive. Brandon's Northwestern MBA didn't count for much when every Google search of his name brought up federal court records. His family was mortified. His parents had immigrated from India, worked their whole lives to put him through business school, and he'd thrown it all away for an affair with a married woman. The divorce proceedings were straightforward. Rebecca didn't contest much. Hard to argue for alimony when you're facing federal charges for betraying your spouse's company. I found a nice downtown loft with mountain views, closer to work, closer to restaurants, closer to the life I wanted to build. The house in Highlands Ranch held too many memories of a marriage that had been failing long before Brandon showed up. Rebecca moved in with her sister after posting bail. Her legal bills were mounting, her career prospects non-existent. Corporate espionage convictions don't disappear from background checks. 18 months later, I was sitting in my downtown loft reading the business section when I saw a small article buried on page 6. Former Meridian Tech executive sentenced to 2 years for corporate espionage. Rebecca had pled guilty and gotten a relatively light sentence because of her cooperation and clean record. Brandon got 4 years because he'd tried to lie to the FBI about his recruitment meetings with competitors. I set the paper down and looked out at the Denver skyline. Funny how things work out. The federal case had taken longer than anyone expected. Turns out the FBI investigation uncovered a bigger network than just Brandon and Rebecca. 3 other companies had similar schemes running junior employees feeding information to competitors through personal relationships. Our case became the poster child for corporate security reform. Rebecca had tried to rebuild her career after posting bail, but corporate espionage convictions stick around. Last I'd heard, she was working at a small nonprofit making about a third of her old salary. Her sister told someone who told someone that Rebecca was seeing a therapist and trying to figure out how she'd made such catastrophically bad decisions. Brandon's story was even more pathetic. His LinkedIn profile had vanished completely. His Northwestern MBA didn't mean much when every background check brought up federal court records. Word was he'd moved back in with his parents and was working at his uncle's restaurant in Chicago. Dreams of being a tech executive permanently destroyed by one affair with a married woman. The divorce had been finalized 14 months ago. Rebecca didn't fight it much. Hard to demand alimony when you're facing federal prison for betraying your husband's company. I kept the house initially, but ended up selling it 6 months later. Too many memories of a marriage that had been dying long before Brandon showed up. My promotion to executive VP had come through as promised, along with a corner office and a 40% salary bump. The company used our security breach as a case study for other corporations. I'd given presentations at 3 industry conferences about identifying insider threats. Turns out getting betrayed by your wife and her boyfriend was good for my career. The irony wasn't lost on me. Rebecca's affair had led directly to the best professional opportunity of my life. But the real satisfaction wasn't professional. It was personal. 6 months ago, I'd started dating again. Nothing serious, just dinner with women my age who understood that life was complicated and messy, and sometimes people made terrible decisions that hurt the people they were supposed to love. Jennifer was a divorce attorney I'd met at a business networking event. She was 45, had been through her own marriage disaster, and didn't have any illusions about happily ever after. We went to movies, tried new restaurants, talked about books and travel, and what we wanted the next phase of our lives to look like. She knew my story. Everyone in Denver's business community knew my story, but she didn't treat me like a victim or try to fix me. She just liked spending time with someone who understood that trust was something you earned slowly and carefully. Last month, I'd gotten an offer to run the entire West Coast technology division for Meridian. Seattle-based position, complete autonomy over a 200-person team, stock options that would set me up for early retirement if I wanted it. Richard, the CEO, had made the offer personally. Mike, what you did with the security breach showed real leadership. You turned a potential disaster into a competitive advantage. The board wants you running our most important technology initiatives. I'd asked for 2 weeks to think about it. The offer was incredible, more money than I'd ever imagined making. The kind of role that would define my legacy in tech. But it would mean leaving Denver, starting over in a new city, building new relationships. At 48, I was finally free to make choices based on what I wanted, instead of what was expected of me. That evening, I drove up to the mountains like I'd been doing regularly since the divorce. The trails around Evergreen had become my thinking space, the place where I processed everything that had happened and figured out what came next. The sunset over the Rockies was spectacular orange and purple light, painting the peaks while the valleys filled with shadow. For the first time in years, I felt completely at peace with my life. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. How'd the mountain thinking go? Ready for dinner and a decision about Seattle? I smiled and typed back, yeah, I think I am. The truth was, I'd already decided. I was taking the Seattle job, not because I was running from Denver or from the memories of Rebecca and Brandon, but because I was finally ready to bet on myself again. Rebecca and Brandon had taught me something valuable, even if they hadn't meant to. They'd shown me the difference between looking trustworthy and being trustworthy, between appearing loyal and actually being loyal. Expensive lessons for them, but useful education for me. Brandon had thought he was smart enough to steal from a Fortune 500 company and get away with it. Rebecca had thought she was clever enough to help him without consequences. Both had underestimated what happens when you betray someone who understands how information really flows in the corporate world. But more than that, they'd underestimated what happens when you betray someone who's patient enough to let you destroy yourself while documenting every step. I started the drive back to Denver thinking about the move to Seattle. New city, new team, new challenges. At 48, I was just getting started on what felt like the best phase of my career. The rearview mirror showed the mountains fading into darkness, but I wasn't looking back anymore. Some chapters end with betrayal and loss. Others begin with wisdom and the knowledge that the people who really matter are the ones who stand by you when everything falls apart. Rebecca and Brandon were serving their sentences now, Rebecca in minimum security federal prison, Brandon in medium security because of his lies to investigators. They'd both be out eventually, both face years of rebuilding their lives and reputations. Meanwhile, I was getting ready to run a major technology division for one of the most successful companies in America. My reputation in the industry had never been stronger. My personal life was finally heading in a direction that felt authentic and sustainable. The city lights of Denver spread out below as I descended from the mountains. In 2 months, I'd be looking at a different skyline from a different apartment, leading a different team, building something new. Rebecca's affair had cost her everything: career, marriage, freedom, reputation. Brandon's ambition had cost him the same. But my response to their betrayal had given me everything I'd never dared to ask for: professional recognition, financial security, personal freedom, and the hard-earned wisdom that comes from surviving something that was supposed to destroy you. Sometimes the best revenge isn't dramatic confrontation or public humiliation. Sometimes it's patience and letting people face the natural consequences of their choices while you build something better from the ashes they left behind. I pulled into my parking garage and took the elevator to my loft. Tomorrow I'd call Richard and accept the Seattle position. Tomorrow I'd start planning the next chapter of a life that had turned out better than I'd ever imagined possible. Tonight, I was just grateful to be free.